everyone, and welcome to another Fresh Fiction Virtual Book Club. I'm Samantha T, and today's guest author, who just had a recent birthday like I did, is Xio Axelrod, USA Bestselling author, and we are going to dig into her latest series, which is all about the Lillys and a girl rock band. Xio, happy birthday, and it's so great
Thank
to see
you.
you again.
Happy birthday to you. Thanks for having me back.
Thank you. Now, Xio, we're going to start off with an easy question. How did
Okay.
you first get started writing? And tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I grew up in the music industry, and so I've been writing songs since I was little and recording and all that stuff since I was little. The fiction thing came sort of in an odd way. I used to write fanfic. I sort of fell into the fanfic world for a bit for Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and didn't really think to publish anything. It was just sort of like something I did for fun and forgot about it. And then I fell into another fandom sort of and was sort of dabbling on my blog, writing a little bit there. And people kept asking for more. Can you write some more? Can you write some more? And I was on the road with my band, but I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I can keep writing this. And then 9 months and 200,000 words later, I had this thing that they wanted to buy that they had read for free, and I didn't know what to do with it. And a friend of mine was like, "You've written a romance," which I hadn't read. I'd never read a romance. She's like, "You should, publish this or find an agent or something like that." And I was like, "Okay, that I'll look into that." That was kind of how I got started.
And I mean, every time I've talked to you, I've just been fascinated with your history and coming from music and curious as to how much that was an integral part in your initial writing and the experience of writing lyrics and songs. And how does that really translate now into novels?
Right. I've had a few reviews on some of my books where they say something like my prose is lyrical or like this reads like lyrics. And I'm like, I guess it's my phrasing, the way that I structure my paragraphs and stuff like that. I have like breaks in odd places. And I think that comes from the songwriting. I take it as a compliment because, I write in beats in my head,
Mhm.
just syllables and words and things like that. That's how I write, and I don't know how to write differently. So I'm glad that it works for people. But it was definitely a challenge to go from writing short form to long form. But again, in short form, you're telling a story, but in like very few words. And so it was like, oh, now I get to really flesh it out and I really get to talk about what they're thinking and what they're feeling. And I don't have to truncate, or like hint at things. I can just say it, which is cool.
But does that help you? Because you're right. I mean, with songs, it is a story in a very compressed nature.
Yeah.
And so you're used to being able, okay, you're going to have that beginning, you have that point of interest, the conflict, and then hopefully, it wraps it up either in a good or tragic way, depending on the
Right.
song.
Yeah.
So it forces that story element for the longer, but still, does it help you be more concise? Or like you said, it gives you more freedom to fill in all the other edges?
It gives me more freedom outside of dialogue. I think it helps me with dialogue
Mm,
because you have to be concise there. You can't write monologues. No one's giving soliloquies. You know what I mean? So like, unless you have a moment where you can fit one in. But, it does help with like the natural rhythm of speaking when people have a conversation and like interrupting each other and those kinds of things. Because those, for me, those were song lyrics are usually like it's like a thought,
mhm.
an incomplete thought. And so I think I read a lot of incomplete thoughts in terms of dialogue. So it does help me there for sure.
And have you found now writing novels full time that in turn has influenced your songwriting?
I have to say yeah, because at the moment I'm really only writing songs for the Lillys,
Mhm.
the band in the book, and so I'm in their heads and like what they, So I haven't written anything for myself for a while, and I do wonder what was going to come out. But writing for them is fun, and like choosing the songs that they would cover and that kind of stuff is fun. So it definitely is influencing my musical side for sure. Yeah.
And have you found other and I can keen in on this because like I said earlier, I mean, it's to me this is a very unique background and how that then plays into the writing elements. And there are certain songs that really do tell a great story. And as you're singing along to them, or at least as I sing along to them,
Mhm.
usually in my car around the house, I'm picturing the story that goes along with that. And other songs,
Yeah.
it's just music. right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's just fascinating of what are those different elements of where it really becomes that mini story, and what are those key items that you tend to look out for where it really impacts you versus, hey, this is just a good melody.
It's lyrics, right? It's the perspective. I think someone asked me recently why people listen to sad songs when they're sad. Like, why wouldn't you want to listen to a happy song if you're sad to like lift yourself up? And I think it's because you want to be seen,
Mhm.
right? You know, you're feeling this emotion that feels so profound to you. And it's like, am I the only one that's going through this, that's ever been through this? Is there anyone else out there? And then you find a song that speaks to that emotion and you're like, ah, I'm not alone.
That's it.
You know, it's the same thing, I think, with the genre that I write in romance, where people are beginning to see more of themselves in these books. Like, you know, more diverse voices are coming through. And so people are seeing themselves go through or see the characters go through so many things that we go through in life, but come through at the end with a happy ending. So I think with songs, it's the same way. Even if the song ends sadly, it's like, yes, well, at least someone out there is feeling this too, or understands what I'm feeling, so I'm not so alone, you know? I think that's part of it. I think it's that you're looking for something to connect to in the lyric. And a melody can be beautiful, it can be sad, it can be happy, whatever. But that lyric, though, that phrase that will get you, and you're like, oh man, like they know what I'm talking. I know what they're talking about. I've been there. They've been there.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think
And
that's
I
what it is.
think that's so true because I'm finding also with a lot more of the books that I'm reading, I am looking for those elements that I can identify with.
Hmm.
It's no longer I'm reading about the medieval princess stuck in a tower like I did when I was younger. Now it's like, oh no, these are characters that sometimes are striking too close to home.
Right.
And like, oh, I can't go through this one right now because
Yeah.
they're dealing, with losing a parent, or, there's just so many different elements. But there's other books where it's like, oh no, I can relate to
Hmm.
these characters. This to
Yeah.
me seems so much more real. And I think that's something that you've really captured in a lot of your books.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think I write what I want to read, honestly. And the things that I read, I'll find books that I'll enjoy it. And it was like, it was fun while it lasted and I kind of put it aside. And then there are other books where I'm like, you know what? This is going on my comfort shelf. So like when I need to like, during the pandemic, I reread so many books and listened to so many audiobooks that I listened to over and over again. I got these like badges from Audible that were like, you're a repeat listener or whatever. And I was like, yeah, I've listened to Red, White, and Royal Blue 8 times in a row, because I needed the feelings that it gave to me. So I like to write books that I hope will resonate with people who have been through things that I've been through or things that my characters have gone through. And I want them to feel seen, not to repeat myself, but I want them to feel seen. So
And
that,
are
that goes.
those aspects that you are putting naturally into your story, or is it something that you're consciously thinking about as the story develops, or is it something that evolves with the characters themselves?
I'm very much a pantser.
Mm,
I don't plot, I don't outline, I don't do synopses, I don't do any of that. You were talking earlier about when you're listening to a song, it's like watching a movie play out in your head, and that's how I write.
mm.
So like I'll have the characters will come to me, the situation will come to me, and then okay, I'm just gonna sit back and watch you guys live your lives for a while, and then the movie repeats, like the scenes will repeat over and over again until they coalesce into something that's like I'm putting on Netflix and watching a show, the same episode. And so I know what's going to happen and I know where they're going, what they're saying. And I just sit down and they're dictating to me what's happening. And that's how I write, which is probably why I'm really bad at like deadlines and stuff. But my characters take me on the journey that they want to go on. And I don't know what their story is until they tell me. So I'm not going and goes, okay, today I'm going to write a book about blah. I'm writing a book about a rock band, but I don't know their individual lives until they tell me what they are. Mm.
And so and I love this because frankly, this is a lot of what I do for my technical presentations too. It's like I sit there and I'm thinking, I'm picturing all these things and
Yeah,
waiting for it to really, like you said, coalesce before I can actually put it down on paper. And
yeah,
then I can start manipulating things. So you're waiting until it's essentially perfect, so to speak, so that
right.
now you're just kind of documenting it.
Yeah, yeah.
And so do
It's
you find that
almost like
you more
the
revisions with
reverse
that?
of, well, it's almost like the reverse of having a script. Like when you're
Hmm.
filming something, there's a script and people are moving from the script. So I'm watching the film happen and then I'm writing the script. So it's kind of like that. It does cause some issues, especially like now that I'm a hybrid author. When I was an indie, I could do whatever. But now that I'm writing for two publishers, they have deadlines. I have to, sometimes their deadlines clash, so I'm like, okay, I need to like my time management has to be a bit better and I have to like sort of whip my characters into shape a bit when they want to just lollygag and hang out and not move the plot forward, you know. So I'm still learning. I'm still learning to do that.
So do you end up with extra scenes that you're like, okay, this is like you said, they're just kind of hanging out. Yes, there's activity, but that's not what I actually need to put on the page. So do you have like these other extra scenes of, hey, your characters are still living over here despite
Yeah.
what's going into the book?
Yeah, there's definitely extra scenes that I don't leave into the manuscript when I turn it in. There are scenes that get cut from the manuscript because my editor's like, we don't really need this scene.
Mhm.
Why, this scene doesn't do anything. I just love the scene because I love the banter and the vibe. And she's like, yeah, that doesn't really do anything for the book. And, there's a couple of scenes where I fought and said, you know what? I know that you don't feel that this is doing anything to advance the plot, but really what it's doing is showing how these two people are bonding or how this group interacts with each other or whatever it is. And sometimes I'll win those battles and sometimes I don't. So yeah, I'm sure there's some stuff. I know there's definitely some scenes that got cut, not for length, but for content. And
Mhm.
so those are maybe going to a newsletter or something like that someday. But yeah, there's definitely film on the cutting room floor, so to speak.
Well, tell me what it's been like writing the Lillys. Um, because of your background with music, I mean, and you've written in other focus areas with rom-coms and contemporary fiction. I mean, I remember seeing you on a sports panel and you were like, I don't know why I'm on here. I have one book that's dealing with
One
sports.
hockey romance.
Like, okay, fine. But music just always seems to be your passion. And you've had
Mhm.
some other books set in the music industry, but here's, I mean, a girl rock band. I mean, any of us that were growing up with like Joan Jett, I mean, Pat Benatar is like, hey, this is wow. I mean, we don't
Yeah,
get many of these types of books. I mean, what's
yeah,
this
yeah.
been like?
It's been wild, because the concept came before I ever talked to a publisher about doing it. I just had Lily, who was the lead singer of the band, came to me first, and I just sort of set it aside. I didn't even know if it was going to be a romance. It was just like, here's this character, don't know what her story is, don't know anything about her. And so when I went to a conference and Sourcebooks approached me and they said, we like your voice, we'd like to work with you. Do you have anything we could look at? And I was like, well, I have this idea for this rock star and she has a band and it's all so I was like, I'm like, and it's an all girl band. Yeah, that's it. And they were like, we love it, let's talk. And so I get to play sort of like, I call it my rock and roll fairy tale because you have women playing rock music in it's a very male dominated world. And then you have women of color in the band playing rock music. And so that's like fish out of water a little bit, but also they're incredibly talented, incredibly driven, and they're not there to just look pretty. So they're like, they want to be taken seriously, and me, when I was full-time doing music, I was in the same alternative rock world. And I had a hard time booking gigs. Like people would just take a look at my headshots or whatever, or see me and just assume that I did a certain style of music or every style of music except for the one that I was doing, basically. And so I wanted them to deal with some of that, some of the misogyny, some of the racism, some of the just dismissiveness that they, being pretty women or whatever, or just being women. And so they get to persevere through all of that in a way that I couldn't, you know. So I get to, yeah, it's wish fulfillment for them. Someone said
Hmm.
the Go-Go's. Yeah, the Go-Go's were a big
Yes.
influence. I listened to so much music and watched like documentaries and talked to friends and pulled from every experience I could, personal and from everyone around me to sort of create their world.
Hmm. And so, with that, I mean, what do you think were, with your own experience, what other music influences were critical with putting the Lilies together then?
Um, the toughest part was trying to find their contemporaries, which it was when I did the first book, it was a little harder than it is right now. In the last 3 years, there's been like explosion of female rock artists, like successful, hearing them on the radio, seeing them in the thing. And it's like, and I love it. I absolutely love it. And there's a lot of black alt rock like that's doing really well right now. And so for like Kayla's book, this book too, when I put together the playlist for that, I was able to pull all these new acts and I was like, this is amazing. But for book one, I was looking at like the 80s, the 90s, music from that era because we had the Go-Go's, we had Joan Jett and Pat Benatar, and then we had like the Breeders and like, PJ Harvey and all these people that were kind of like trying so hard to like carve their way in, some more successful than others. Um, and I just sort of immersed myself in that music. And I was like, and they wouldn't listen to just all female groups either, so
Mhm.
there's a lot of like early aughts, rock music in there. But yeah, my playlist for the series is like hundreds and hundreds of songs at this point. Spotify's like, really?
Again, it all kind of depends on the mood, right?
Yeah, 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 for sure. And each member of the band has their own, like I don't define the type of rock that they play because I don't want them to be pigeonholed.
Hmm.
And it's a bit because like I was the same way. I played everything. But each member has their own sort of feel and style, and so each member's set of songs is a little different, you know.
Hmm.
Some are harder rock, and some are softer, more pop rock, and some, so it's like it's been cool getting to know them through their musical taste.
And I was looking at some of the reviews, and there was one that just the description of it just really hit me of really calling these books. They were sweet, but you still got all the rock and roll vibes.
Yeah.
And I think part of that element again is the treatment of the characters and the journey that each of these ladies are also going through and in their relationship, and especially right now with the latest book with Kayla and Ty, and that
Hmm.
there's just so many different, and I say sweet, but I mean not in like a cloyingly sweet
Yeah.
way. It's
Yeah.
like what we were talking about earlier, that comfort. It's like, oh, that makes me feel good with that relationship
Yeah.
as they're finding those bondings.
It's
But
very
again, you still have
warm.
those rougher edges, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
they're warm. I think what people because I don't read reviews, but I've done interviews and talked to readers are really great with giving me feedback like live like which is awesome. But I think what people are referring to, not only the relationship between Kayla and Ty, which is very sweet and I love them together, but also like the found family, because that's a big theme in the series. And so you have these people who may not have great backgrounds or may not have been accepted for who they are or whatever it is, and they found each other like through like the billions of people in the world. They somehow ended up in the same space and are all on the same page and are like, creating art together and or whatever. And so you get this feeling of like you see people being seen and being accepted and loved for who they are. And that's bound to make you feel good, right? So, I mean, it would make me feel good if I found a group of people and I was like, oh my gosh, you get me. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I hope that's what it is.
And I think it's that found family plus the elements of self discovery
Yeah.
that they're also going through as they come to that realization.
Yeah. Yeah, I tend to write that a lot, personal journey a lot, because, and I think one of the things that we as a society sort of, one of the misconceptions I think is that you have those journeys when you're young and they stop when you get older. And I've written older characters who've discovered things about themselves, in their 30s or 40s or whatever. And it's like people are always discovering things about themselves. And I think it's weird that we think that it stops when you're 22 or 25 or whatever it is. So,
Mhm.
and so for that reason, a lot of times this series will be classified as YA because they think of it as like coming of age. And I'm like, these people aren't coming of age. I know who they are. They're just like still, you're still developing in your 20s. Like it's so strange. And so I have to like tell moms who want their 12-year-old to read it that it's not YA. Like you don't want your 12-year-old to read this book. But but yeah, I always found that an interesting sort of, I don't know, result of that self-discovery, that self-journey that the characters go through, that, oh, we're going to associate that with really young people, you know?
That is crazy.
Yeah.
That's to me that's just part of living, and that you are constantly going through different phases of life and different sets of circumstances, and
Yeah.
hopefully you are learning and growing as you go through all that. Because where I am
Yeah.
now is certainly a far cry from where I was in my 20s, and
Right.
there's some days I'm like, oh gosh, have I really accomplished anything since I was 20? So I mean, it just kind of goes back and forth depending on what that mood is.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Zero, I want to flip over to what we call our fresh fiction facts. Okay,
Okay.
these are a series of short questions meant to be kind of off the top of your head. And I'm going to start off with an easy one.
Okay.
Who would you most want to be stuck in an elevator with?
Who would I most want to be stuck in an elevator with? Wow.
Living, dead, real, fiction?
He's gonna kill me for saying this. I think I'd like to be stuck in an elevator with Christopher Rice because
It
because
would be very
he
entertaining.
he's very entertaining. I love him to death. And when we were together, we were really silly. But like he is just someone said he smells good. He does smell good. But he can be very serious sometimes, especially when he's in public. But when he's in private, he can be very, very silly. And I just love that about him. So I think we'd have a blast stuck in the elevator together.
How do you celebrate a new release?
I don't have a ritual. I usually will treat myself to something. Like for when Girl with Stars in Her Eyes came out, I got a really cool pair of sunglasses that I had seen. It was usually something that I would never like spend money on for myself. It was like $100 for a pair of sunglasses, which is like insane. I still have them. I keep them in the case at all times unless I'm wearing them. Like I'm very, very particular about these glasses that I've had for 3 years now. Or I'll do something, just something fun for myself. Like, for this book, I didn't get to do anything yet. So I'm thinking, because I've been like doing so much tour stuff that I think I'll have to take a day to myself next week. And like, there's a place near me that makes this rainbow cake. It's like a really tall slice of rainbow cake. So I'm gonna like order a slice of rainbow cake and like have a cup of tea and watch a movie that I haven't seen yet or something like that. I'll do something like that.
See, that sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it's self-care. That's what I do, is
Yes.
self-care.
And hopefully that's cake with like real buttercream icing,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Don't mess with
yeah.
any whipped or fondant. I mean, it's
No,
okay.
no, no.
Gotta have the
It
buttercream
has
if you're going
and they
to.
have one that has fudge icing too, which is also really good. So I'll see if they have that in stock. But
Yeah, I mean, it's a celebration. You have to go full out for it. Come on.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, what is the most terrible movie that you legitimately enjoy?
Most terrible movie that I legitimately enjoy. Oh, so there was a movie that I saw about 15 years ago. I don't know when it's from. I want to say it's from the 90s, but it had Paul Rubens in it, Pee Wee Herman, and it's called Pandemonium. And it's sort of like a spoof of like camp, like I don't know, college camp like slasher movies or whatever. It's like these all these like high schooler kids or whatever, college kids are at a camp and they're all getting like off in weird ways. Like there's a scene where one like the cheerleader, I think she is brushing her teeth. Like she gets killed by her toothbrush. She's like it's like a strange thing. Like she's brushing her teeth and like the toothbrush takes on a life of its own or something. And then when they find her, she's got like toothpaste foam all over her face. It's just the most bizarre movie. And Paul Rubens plays a Canadian Mountie. It's been a while since I've seen it, and I keep trying to find it because it's never. And when I talk about it, people think I made it up or had like a fever dream or something. But this movie exists. It's called Pandemonium, and if you ever get a chance to watch it, it's bonkers, absolutely bonkers.
Okay, people are going to now be searching all the different streaming services. They're like, okay, where is this?
Yeah, yeah, it's weird. It's so weird. I think what's his name? Judge Reynolds, is that his name? Curly blonde hair, was in all the like yeah, he's in it. Like it's really weird movie.
Okay. What is the most unnecessary thing that you've ever bought online?
Most unnecessary thing. Well, I have a stack of Funko Pops up here. So you can't see my room. Like I have like it looks really like nice here and like books and stuff. Above it though, I have a skull. I have Funko Pops. I have a Spike puppet from Angel from Buffy the Vampire Slayer that's
Oh
still
wait,
in the
you mean when they
box.
had the puppet episode?
When they did the puppet episode, they made, even though Spike was never a puppet on the show, they made a limited edition of Spike puppets, and I have one of them above me.
Wow.
Although I didn't buy that online, I got that when I was in England. But all the Funko Pops, like I have a lot of like random like fandom stuff around me. I can't think of the most inane thing that I've bought. Um, but yeah, maybe it'll come to me. But yeah, I have a lot. I buy a lot of like little things like that.
Okay, well, leading into the next question, other than books, because that's a gimme for most authors and readers, right?
Yeah.
What is something that you own a ridiculous amount of?
Mm, we'll say not books and not music because those two things are kind of a given. Probably collectibles. I just got rid of a lot of my collectibles. Like I worked at Hot Topic when I first moved back to the States. And so they would have these like employee like these sales, and you get your employee discount on top of the sale. So I have like, I don't know, gothic dolls and stuff over on this side of the room. I love Tim Burton, so I have a lot of Tim Burton collectibles from like Nightmare Before Christmas and stuff. Actually, Ro, who's in the audience today, got my Corpse Bride dolls that I had because I had the tall figurines. And I was like, I like the movie, but I don't love it as much as she does. And so I sent them to her. Oh, Rose said Pandemonium is from 1982. Okay, okay. So I sent them to her because I wanted them to have a nice, loving home. But yeah, I have a lot of collectibles, and my husband's like, "Do you really need all these toys?" I'm like, "Yes, yes, I do.
You have
They
to
bring
pick
me
and
joy."
choose. And like you said, sometimes they need to find a new home, but
Yeah,
doesn't mean you have to get
yeah,
rid of everything.
yeah, exactly.
So, how many different musical instruments do you play?
So, voice is my main, obviously. I started playing piano when I was 3, so that's my main instrument. I play by ear. I mean, I can read music, but I play by ear. And so any instrument that I pick up, I can play at some point. Like I can,
Wow.
even if it's not like proficient, I can like, it's like I have a band, and when I'm writing songs for them, I have guitar, I have bass, I have like a little drum, stuff like that. I'll record a demo and I'll play all the parts,
Mm,
at least to give them an idea of what I want, and then they take it and they do all the amazing things to it and make the guitar part like an actual guitar part, but I can pick it out. So I have like everything here. The one instrument that I want that I can't have other than a drum kit because there's nowhere to put it is a cello. Cello is my favorite instrument, but it's just so big and I have nowhere
it
to
is.
put it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the music from the cello because I learned the violin. And so nice,
Mhm.
compact, easy. But looking back, I'm like, man, the cello would have been really cool.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere that it's the instrument that's the closest to the human voice,
Mm,
which
okay.
yeah.
That's why I love the angel theme. I mean, that's one of those that I can just listen to because the cello comes out. I'm like, oh yes, this
Yeah.
this does it.
Yeah, yeah.
Is there an instrument that you haven't learned that you would like to try?
The drums.
Drums.
For sure, which is weird because there's pictures of me as like a 4 or 5 year old in the studio, like with the drumsticks in my hands, and looks like I'm playing. And I probably smacked them a few times, but I never learned how to play. Um, and yeah, if I had, you know, thought of it when I was, I don't know, 6 or 7 or 8, I would have been like, "Get me a drum kit." I want to learn how to play the drums because I
See,
love,
my mom
I,
played drums when she was growing up, and
oh
so she was like
wow,
in the drum major and everything. And so that, I mean,
oh
and she always had us do all these other musical instruments too. But the drums were her pride and joy of like, oh yes, that she could do that, and she'd try to.
yeah,
She would instruct me. This is exactly how you need to hold the drumsticks and
yeah,
the rhythms and everything. So it's the drums and the accordion. Those were her two main instruments.
wow, okay, okay. One of the most, I used to be in a medieval music group when I was in college. And I loved all of the instruments that they played. They played like instruments that you don't see anymore, unless you're like at a Renaissance fair, which I also sang at a Renaissance fair. But one of the instruments they had was a hammered dulcimer, and so my roommate had one, and I got to play it, and I like picked up the hammers, and I just started playing, and she was like, "Oh, you've played this before?" And I'm like, "No." She's like, how are you playing this instrument that you?" I was like, "I don't know, just instinct, it's a stringed instrument, so if you played any stringed instrument, you can kind of figure it out." But it was really beautiful, so I'd maybe want to have one of those one day too. It's
Oh
stunning.
yeah. Okay, okay, back on reading. What is your most dog-eared book? The one that you just constantly go back to?
Well, I grew up reading Anne Rice, and so my favorite novel, I always point to is The Witching Hour, the first in her Mayfair Witches series. Um, I have that in hardcover, so it's like pristine. But I have my cover. I have 5 copies of Interview with the Vampire. I have my original paperback, which has it's like I took it with me to Book Bonanza a couple of years ago, and I've been carrying it around, forever. And the cover came off. I was like, oh no! So I like taped it back on, and then it split in half. So it's in like 2 halves now. So I taped that back together. So it's in pretty bad shape. But it's from whenever it's from.
Oh God. Wasn't it like 1979 it came out?
I think so. I don't know if this paperback is from that far back, but it's definitely old because I got it at a used bookstore. So it's definitely, yeah, 70s, 80s, whenever it's from. And then I have a first edition hardcover that my husband got me for my birthday several years ago, which is in plastic, like on the shelf, like I will
Oh yeah.
never. And I have the comic book
Oh wow.
versions. I have the graphic novel, and then I have another like more recent paperback from the early aughts. So yeah, you would think that that's my favorite book because of so many copies I have, but it's The Witching Hour. Yeah.
It was slightly a different style of hers because introduced to her with, the interview with the vampire,
Yeah.
witching hour. I mean, yeah, it was. I think I was a little bit older reading those,
Mhm.
and again, I think it just resonated a little bit more.
Yeah,
Just
I
like,
fell into I don't know, I guess I found that paperback in the used bookstore and then I went and found every book that I could find of hers. And so I read like 15 books in a row. Like I just devoured everything that she had. Her historicals. I read I read the Beauty
oh yeah,
trilogy, which I didn't even know what I was reading. I was like, what is that? Like I just did not know. Way too young to read those. But yeah, anything that had her name on it, I just devoured it because I like to think of when I'm writing character, place as character, location as character, and I definitely got that from reading her. Like
oh yeah,
her character, her New Orleans was a character in in those series, and like I felt like I'd been there before I ever went. So
oh yeah, yeah. Because I was introduced to her through my parents because they had a copy of Queen of the Damned, and
mm,
I was like, oh, this sounds fantastic. And both my parents were like, oh no, 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 you can't start with that. You have to start with the first book,
with
Interview.
interview, okay, yeah,
So
yeah,
it's hereditary. We have to read the series in orders, despite what other people say. I
right,
have to read in order.
yeah,
And like you said, it was that introduction to New Orleans, and I went to school down there, and so it was like, oh yeah, this. The whole time you're walking around, it's like, okay, I can see where she's coming from all of
yeah.
this, and
It felt like you'd
your
been there,
house.
right?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, it's
yeah,
crazy. So it's like,
yeah.
so yes. So again, that's a cool thing talking with Christopher on any of that, and it's like, okay, here's his mom, and despite,
Yeah, yeah, he's an amazing person, an amazing author if you haven't read
oh
him. Like
yes,
he's
yeah.
incredible. His romance series that he's doing now, the Sapphire Coast series,
Mhm.
is phenomenal. If for people who don't like thrillers, like he does write romance. But he's just a really cool guy and so,
Oh yeah.
down to earth. Yeah.
Okay, you've been kidnapped, but they return you 2 hours later because you will not stop talking about what?
Probably Scum. This is Norwegian TV show that I fell in love with and learned Norwegian so that I could watch.
And I
So
think that is crazy that you went and learned Norwegian so that you could watch the show without
yeah.
subtitles.
Yeah, well, they didn't when I first started watching the show, no one else was watching it outside of Norway, or outside of Scandinavia, I should say. And so there were no translations. And then once I think season three, once the rest of the world found the show, there were like translations into English, into Spanish, into Portuguese, into Russian, whatever. And I was like, oh, cool, but I'm learning it now, so I may as well. But I did use like some of the subtitles that people added to test my Norwegian, or go, oh, they totally, mistranslated that sentence, or oh, they totally didn't even translate that sentence at all. So it was really fun. And then I just now over the pandemic, I was watching like gardening shows and like, you know, other shows that we don't get over here.
Mhm.
Thank you, NordVPN. It's like watching, NRK shows. But yeah. But yeah, it would be scum because I would just keep talking until they decided to let me go.
What is the first thing that you think about when you wake up in the morning?
Um, wow. Usually, well, I sleep with music on, so it's usually whatever is playing.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, I listen to these channels on like Sirius XM and on Spotify or whatever that have like a set of music that repeats. I'll put it on repeat, or it'll be like, here's a radio station, but it's like 40 songs, and then that same song will be on when it'll wake me up and I'll be like, "Ah, I already heard this song 3 times, because my brain, that part of my brain never shuts down. So like, yeah, I've had to wake up in the middle of the night and change the station because that one song keeps coming on and I don't want to hear it again. So yeah, it's
Oh,
probably
yeah,
music or whatever's playing.
I can understand that. No matter how much you might like it, it's like, okay, nope, I need to move on to something else at this point.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, assuming that they're real, which would you rather see, a vampire or a ghost?
Hmm. Depends on what universe the vampire is from. I'm gonna go with vampire. I'm gonna go with vampire. I think because ghosts make me sad. They can't, well, generally they can't physically affect anything, and sometimes usually there's some sort of like madness attached to their existence or whatever. Although vampires can go mad too in a lot of universes because they've lived for so long. But yeah, I'm gonna go with vampire because at least they can like interact with the world around them and stuff.
Okay. Now, I know that you have another book out in August for a new series, right? Love on the Byline.
Yeah, yeah, it came out in August. That is with Blue Box Press, and that is it was supposed to be a rom-com, but apparently I can't write a rom-com without adding some suspense in there. And so it turned into a rom-com susp or whatever you're going to call it. But it's sort of all of my books are in the same universe except for the Lily series because that belongs to Source Books. So I got to play with some characters that I hadn't touched in a long time, and reintroduced my Hollywood side to readers. Because the thing that I wrote that I was talking about when you asked me when I started writing that huge 200,000 word thing, that was all like a behind the scenes of the TV show in Hollywood. And so I got to reintroduce some of those characters. And now I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do with that piece because it was out as a book for a brief time and then I took it out of print. So I think I'm going to re-serialize it or something
Oh, wow.
because it was such a cool story. Two leads who fall in love who aren't supposed to be together and all this kind of stuff. So I think I'm going to reintroduce it since they're in love on the byline. But it was fun writing that book. It was sort of a second chance romance, misconnection, second chance. He is like the biggest cinnamon roll I've ever written or read. Like Ollie came out of nowhere. He's like he speaks French, he cooks, like he's just he's just amazing. And Blake is like this badass female journalist, you know, and his best friend is an A-list actor, and he works for him. And she and Ollie would have gotten together if she hadn't had beef with his best friend. So like his best friend's the reason why they don't get together the first time. So here they are meeting again some years later, and sort of forced proximity thing going on. So it was fun to write that one.
And when should we expect the next Lily's book?
That's a good question. I'm working on it's Tiff's book. Tiff is book 3. She's the bass player, and then Lily is the lead singer, and she's book 4. Working on Tiff's book now. I don't have a release date for that yet, but hopefully it won't be 2 years and 8 months or whatever it was between the first book and the second one. We don't have. I think the pandemic kind of put the put brakes on everything that was going on. But yeah, it shouldn't be that long. And I'm also working on the follow up to Love on the Byline. So 2 books juggling at the same time right now. By the second one for Byline will probably come out before the third release book for sure, because they just have a shorter schedule.
And where is the best place for our readers to keep up with you, find out exactly when those are going to come out, and any other kind of news?
Well, I'm really big on social media. I'm a social media butterfly, at Xio Axelrod on Instagram and TikTok. I have a Facebook page, and they can find me at xioaxelrod.com. My website is usually up to date. We'll see. But yeah, I'm around.
Well, Zia, thanks again for joining us for the Fresh Fiction Virtual Book Club. It was great to talk to you because it's been a while since I've seen you since the last
Yeah,
con. So it's
yeah.
good to catch up and stick around for our happy hour where we can get some other questions from some of our readers.
Awesome. Thanks for having me again.